Hi, ladies. Well, welcome to the podcast of She's in Charge of Business. I am so excited that you're here. And my name is Becky LaFave, your host and the founder of She's in Charge of Business. And together, we're going to unlock your confidence and clarity that you're looking for to get help around your own business and take action in it. So today, I'm super excited that I have a guest. Hey, Sarah, what's going on, girl?
Hey, how are you?
Welcome to the show today.
Thank you.
So this is Sarah. We just went over her last name,
Sarah Gemmel.
Emil. So let me introduce her. She is okay. So I love this beginning part, just so you all know, because we do wear the crown around here. So I love that you are the queen of networking, from building her previous fitness building business to a global platform, which is phenomenal. Using your networking as a main lead gen, but also for helping hundreds of other business owners generate hundreds of dollars as well. And this is fantastic that you've been able to do what you've been able to do for your own business and then jump in and help other women. And so this is awesome. And this is why I wanted to have her, ladies, because she's going to actually talk to us about how to do connections, introductions, and get the best referrals. And so that's what we're out there doing, online or in person, right? This is going to work for both. So welcome to the podcast.
I'm so excited. And this is everyone does it, so it's such a relevant conversation because we're already networking.
Exactly. So this
Yeah.
is why it's so great to meet women like yourself that have actually went through the process and said, "Holy shit, I've got something. Let me share it with the masses so other women can build their business and, do what they're out there doing and network so the world gets more women out there in business." That's the
Right. And
fun
it's just
piece.
making it easier. Yeah, like making it easier to connect, like if everyone just understands networking a little bit better, it just makes everything so much easier.
Yes, I love this. And Sarah, being in business for the last 33 years myself, a business owner of a hair salon and hairstylist, you know,
Hmm.
that was a huge thing, is connection. And so it doesn't matter what business entity you're in, it is all about building networks. And so I'm so excited
Yeah.
because this is such an important topic that I don't think a lot of people talk about.
No, not nearly enough. And like no one dives into the nuances of it, right? Everyone says like, "Oh, go make connections. Oh, go network, go meet people." But then it's like it kind of like, "Okay, well what do I do once I get in the room? Like what do I do once I actually meet all these people? What am I supposed to do when I actually show up other than like hide in the bathroom and make myself look busy because I'm anxious?"
This is so true. Oh my God. So we are going to get deep into this. But before we do, tell us a little bit about your background, why you stepped into this and wanted to really help women thrive.
Yeah, for sure. You touched on most of it, right? So, like, I have a background in psychology. I was in addictions counseling, and I went from addictions counseling to fitness. So,
Mm,
I'm a psych nerd. And then I got into fitness, and I was running that business. And my main lead generator in that business was right. So, I was in fitness maybe like 6-ish years. And when that felt like it was misaligned, I was ready for a change. I was ready to kind of switch it up. I was like, well, what am I already doing? What am I really good at? And what I was good at was connecting people. And I had already been running a networking meeting
mm.
weekly. And in my head, I was like, modern day BNI, I'll just have a couple different chapters that run, and like that's going to be super cute. And I'll just have all these different events, and that's how I'll make my money. And then that wasn't at all what happened. That's not at all what happened. I ended up having 2 chapters and I was at capacity. I was like, okay, I don't want any more. Like, this is good. I don't want to run it. But when I started making content online about how to be better at networking, how to not suck at networking, like how to actually get something out of it, I noticed that people were eating it up. And then by looking at like the market, the industry, what we just talked about, everyone says go network. Really talks about the deep dive into the nuances of how to be successful. So I was like, okay, that's where this is going. And like not only do I have experience in networking, but my psych background helps me to understand it's what is the psychology of the referral partner. It's how do you get that person to make recommendation to you versus someone else. And that's really the success in networking. A lot of people go in and they treat it like sales, or they talk to the ideal client. They treat it like any other type of marketing or sales, but really it kind of sits over here in its own little world because you don't talk to your ideal client. You sales. It's not the normal funnel that you put people through because you're talking to the referral partner, not the ideal client. And that little shift is actually a big, big difference. And I noticed that when I started teaching people that is when they were like, oh, like I started to see it click.
Yeah. And then you thought, I have something here that is remarkable that I can start sharing. And so you're using it as a BNI tool. You were in the BNI and you saw something in BNI and brought that to the online space, and you use their methodology type of thing or somewhat of
so
it.
I don't use their methodology. I started off with BNI as a member, and that got me out into my local community. That was really what sparked a lot of the growth in my fitness business. What I really liked about BNI, what I really, really liked is the exclusivity was cool, but I liked the structure. I liked that when you went in, it wasn't fluffy. It wasn't a waste of time. It wasn't just shooting the shit for an hour. It was, let's get in, let's, talk about business. Let's talk about leads and referrals. They had the accountability portion of like, okay, like what has this group passed in the last week? Here's how much business in terms of revenue that we've actually passed. Like I loved that structure to it. But with BNI, just like any traditional networking group, there's this very transactional feeling to it a lot of times. So it's like, okay, how can we create new spaces that are kind of this middle ground? Like what I do is the middle ground. I don't want it to be transactional, but I also don't want networking to be so relational that now you have a bunch of friends and no business growth.
Right. Like there's that dance, right? There's this perfect dance. So let's dive into this, because how do you show up in a meeting and events so that you can increase in the numbers of quality leads, whether you're online or in person?
The biggest thing is being prepared with a strategy. And this is what I teach, right? Like you have to show up knowing what you're there for. You have to understand your intentions. You have to have the right messaging, the right delivery, the right follow-up systems. How you show up in that space has to be intentional. And those intentions can't be for a sale or a client, right? You're showing up to figure out how can we create mutually beneficial partnerships? How can I get you in front of new opportunities, but how can you also get me in front of new opportunities? How can we share audiences? How can we share resources? What networking does for you is it really just gets you in front of more opportunities. That's really all it's meant to be. But when people go in and when you're treating it like I'm looking for my next client, or, oh, this is a room full of my ideal clients, you show up with commission breath. And you're not connecting to people because they can sense that. And it feels disingenuous, or like if I meet you, right, and you're like, hey, Sarah, this is what I do. This is what I have. Are you interested? And I'm like, I might really like Becky as a person. But as soon as you say that to me and the answer is no, my brain shuts off, right? I'm like, okay, well, I'm not interested. So that's the answer to your question. And we just move on. But if you say, hey, Sarah, I'm just looking to get my podcast out in front of 100 more people. Do you have an avenue of sharing the podcast that would like align with your audience? Heck yeah. Like here's 3 ways that I can share the podcast and get you in front of these audiences. I would love to share that for you because I like you. And then that 100 people increase.
Ooh, we just lost her. Let's see if we can get her back on. Let's pause for a second here, ladies. Well, she's back, and this is amazing. Hey, you know what? Technology, ladies, is what it is. So let's go into this next question, because networking often involves cultivating relationships over time, like we talked about. But how do we stay engaged with the network without overwhelming our contacts? Because what can you share with us your exact strategy? This is where I feel like a lot of women could really use a lot of support in this, because we do get all these people, like I'll go to a live event, and this just recently happened, and there's about 150 women in the room, and I made like 20 really good connections. I networked that thing. And it was actually a conference, a speaker conference. So
Yeah.
networked it really well. But then you get home, and then what is this strategy that you use? Like, is it a spreadsheet? Like, give us the dirt, girl.
Yeah, for sure. And this is like one of those things where it totally depends on how your brain works and what you like. So there's a couple different options, right? But when you go to any kind of meeting, in-person conference, virtual coffee hour, it doesn't matter what it is, there needs to be an immediate follow-up of like, it was great to see you. It was great to meet you. Like, let's stay connected. Like, just get them in your inbox, even if it's just one message, right? And then you have to have a place where you store all these names and contact information. And if you can have something like where you met them, what industry they're in, like just a couple of things about them, I like to do it in my CRM. I'll put them in my CRM if I have their email address, but caveat, they never go on an email list. They don't go on a newsletter list. They
Yes.
don't go on a sales funnel list. Like, they are on their own list by themselves. And now, yes, it does take up contact space, but it allows for you to add tags to their location, their industry, all these things. And then every time I get on a call with that person, I'll keep notes in that contact, right? And then what you can do is you can create automations for those specific networking connections that are not sales, no anything, but it can literally just be, hey, what's up? How are you? It's been a few months. Like, you can have different funnels based on, did you just meet them at an event, or did you actually have a coffee chat with them, right? Or have you actually collaborated with them? Because the follow-up will change a tiny little bit. But even if you're just sending yourself notifications, hey, it's been 6 months since you talked to Becky. Hey, it's been 2 weeks since that coffee chat. Send yourself these reminders, because what that does is, instead of having to nurture 100 people a day, it spreads people out. And now you're getting just a few notifications a day, and you're never going to overwhelm or outdo your audience with just giving.
Right.
You know, like, you're not asking them for anything. You're just saying to yourself, hey, it's been 6 months since you talked to Becky. Go to social media, drop her a couple comments, you know, show her some love on her stories, go to the podcast, listen to some things. Like, how can I support you totally for free without asking for anything in return? That's how I'm going to nurture that relationship with you. And like, you're never going to burn your people out by showing up for them.
Right. And I also too, like, a lot of times, because I keep a spreadsheet of everybody
Yep.
that's on the podcast and
Yep.
different things. And you know what, if somebody pops in my mind, because every once in a while I'll meet somebody, I'm like, oh my God, she's really got to meet so-and-so, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you connect them. Guess I've had reciprocity, right? It's like
Yep.
they remember you because you took yourself out of it, not
Yep.
looking for the sale, like you said earlier, and really supported another sister and said, hey, look, this might be a great match. Hook the two of you up, right? Because they're going to
Yeah.
remember you even more.
Exactly, because people remember who helps them, right? Like, you stand out in a very, very noisy landscape by just giving.
Yeah.
And then when it comes time to ask, like when I go into a launch, right? If you and I have been networking for a while, we have some kind of like warm relationship or good relationship, and I go into a launch, I'm not going to say, hey, Becky, do you want to buy this thing? But I will message you and say, hey, I have this launch coming up. Do you know someone who's a good fit? Or do you mind sharing it? Or do you mind like doing a podcast swap to lead up to the launch? Or can we do some kind of something to support me in this launch, because I know we have a good relationship? I'm not just ignoring you for those 6 months and then coming to you and asking for a favor.
Right.
Right? It's kind of like a piggy bank where you just deposit into a piggy bank, and it's okay to ask for the favor when it's someone that you've been nurturing, someone that you genuinely care about, and someone that you've given to turn around and say, hey, this is what I'm working on. Can you help me with this? They want you, like, your networking partners, your referral partners, your business friends, they want you to let them know how they can support you.
Absolutely. And you know, when you think about it, if you're a real girlfriend, that's the same thing. It's like
Yep,
when big things come
exactly.
up, you know what? My girlfriend's husband just had a heart attack 2 days ago.
Oh my gosh.
You know, your girlfriends know you're real people because they can count on you. They can call you and say, hey, this is the shit that went down.
Yep.
I say, you know, and you step in. What can you do? What meals can you make? It's the same kind of thing. So I'm thinking, like, some women don't quite understand it, but they learn it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we are
Yeah.
those girlfriends. And it's the same way I look at it, is the same way as in networking. You know, it's like, how can I help a sister out? What has she got going on? You know, that I could be supportive. You know, one of the biggest things that I have to say too is back when I was in my early 30s, I did join a BNI group.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't for my business at all,
Oh,
which was
interesting.
very interesting. It was
Yeah.
for me to develop even more of myself.
Yeah.
Because I already was busy. I had already had my business. I didn't need any more clients. I didn't need any of that. But I wanted to learn more how to open myself up, how to just, it was a different way of me being.
Yeah.
And I learned so much. So a lot of things that you shared about the BNI, it was like there was a lot of things I loved and some things that I didn't love, but that's typically anywhere. So
Yeah.
ladies, it's so true. If you are uncomfortable, because that was very uncomfortable for me. I
Mm-hmm.
talked about it on other podcasts before because it's stretching you. It's because
Yep.
I've never done anything like that. It stretched me. And I had done different things that networked with women, but this was a total different entity. So if you're listening right now and you have not done anything online because you're scared, you know what? You have to learn to stretch yourself a little bit because everybody is nervous. Like I always say, if you're nervous, the sister on the other side's probably nervous too.
Yep.
Right. So it's like, how do you just wipe that away? I always say, I know she's nervous, so it's okay for me to be nervous as well. You know,
Yeah.
you walk in a space, you do anything. I always say that. I know she's nervous. I know these women are nervous like me, and just walk in and be you. Right. So if you haven't taken the opportunity to really jump into something, you know, here's the time. You want to jump into anything that's networking, either live or online. Search it out and get into the space because it's so important. Share your top networking strategy for turning, you know, connections into meaning referrals. And that really, like I said earlier, we get into this friend zone, but we really need to get into both where you start making sales as well. And we kind of talked about it, but will you really hit home for the ladies that are just not grasping how the two things work? Because it's either, you know, you'll see women go right for the dagger, you know, like I said early, this is what I do. Are you my client? Are you my, it's like,
Yep.
how are they making sales so they know that networking is really profitable for them? Because they feel like, a lot of people feel like it's wasting my time and I'm not making any sales. Where are they going wrong and what do they need to do to make sure that that's happening? I should say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big long question for you there, Sarah.
And I'll touch on all of it. I think that the most important thing to understand is that the 3 C's of making a referral are clarity, confidence, and connection. And when we hear those 3 words, we often feel like we think about our own clarity, we think about our own confidence. It has nothing to do with us, right? We have to be able to make our referral partners feel clear and confident and connected. And they have to feel all 3 of those things to be saying our name in rooms that we're not in, right? So a lot of people miss the mark on messaging and or delivery. So when you're explaining to someone what you do, can you give it to me in the most simple way to where I can regurgitate it? I need to understand what Sarah does. I need to understand what Becky does so that I can tell someone else. Because a lot of times we use that fluffy creative messaging, or we use messaging that resonates only with the ideal client, or the delivery is unclear. The delivery is not confident. The delivery might be robotic and just hard to connect to. Maybe it just doesn't resonate, right? There's so many like little nuances and just having the clarity in the referral partner, giving them that clarity. They need to be able to say, okay, Sarah does networking strategy and helps you get referrals. Done.
Boom.
You don't need to know my methodology. You don't need to know all my offers. You don't need to know how I'm certified or what makes me an expert. Like, you don't need to know any of that to make the referral. But so many of us get caught up in all of that fluffy stuff, right? Or fluffy messaging like, oh, I help women live their best lives and step into their divine power. I love that for you, but what the fuck does that mean? Okay.
Exactly.
I cannot go into another space and tell anyone what you do based on that information.
Right.
Yeah, you know? So, and then the other part is confidence. I need to be able to translate my confidence into you, meaning that you know that I am an expert, but also that you know that I'm going to take care of your people.
Mm-hmm.
When we show up and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm a mess. I'm so sorry I'm late. My kids are running around. And oh my gosh, is my camera on? Babe, yes, your camera's on. Just start your intro, like just get into it. Or when you say, I'm not prepared, I'm not good at this, I don't know what I'm doing. Stop putting disclaimers on yourself, because the minute you do that, I have this little pinch of like, oh, they're not ready for referrals.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then past
So
that,
true.
exactly. Right. So it's like there's that little subconscious feeling of I need people who are ready to receive these referrals. And then there's the other part where you might be the most confident person in the world, and I might really feel like you're an expert, but are you actually going to take care of the people that I send you? And that's really important, right? And you have to be really, really mindful of that. And then that connection piece is all the stuff we've been talking about, building the relationships and staying in contact and giving freely and nurturing them and asking them how you can support them. Like, you have to have all three of these things in order to get the referral. But in order to like actually make it the referral, right? You give clear messaging, which includes a clear ask. Here's exactly how you can support me. Here's exactly what I need right now. So many women are so uncomfortable asking for help.
Yes.
Or they're not prepared for that question, which I kind of look at you like, well, why are you not prepared for that question? Because we're in a networking space. Like, you're going to get asked, So like when, again, with showing up unprepared, that makes me waver in confidence in you. Show up with intention, show up prepared. You knew exactly what you were here for. You know exactly what you were going to say. I know that you cared enough about this networking space to show up prepared. Right? And it's like that question, you're going to get asked the same questions in any networking space. You're going to get asked to give a 30-second intro. You're going to get asked how people can support you. You're going to get asked what you're working on. Be ready for it. Yeah. And then when someone says to you, oh my gosh, I have a connection for you. I need you to talk to Becky. She has this really awesome podcast. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to write that name down. And when I follow up with you, I'm going to say, thank you so much for being willing to connect me to Becky. Don't forget to send that connection. They offered it. You can follow up on it. It's your job to make sure they actually do it. It's your job to send the friendly reminder. They gave you a direct, I have someone for you. Or yes, I know someone who does that thing that you're looking for. Write their name down and actually follow up on it. Coffee chats. You talk about all these great ideas. When do those things come to fruition? They come to fruition in the follow-up.
Absolutely. And that is one of the biggest things that I see over and over and over is people, I don't want to feel like I'm bugging them. So I didn't follow up. I'm like, well, how do you know if they got it? How do you, like I still do this a lot of times with my own husband. It drives me crazy. I'm like, well, did you follow up? He's like, babe, really? Like, come on. I'm like, well, I'm serious. Did you? Like, if you haven't heard back, why not? What's happening?
Yes.
So it's so important because, like I said earlier, so many people feel like they're bugging or listen, if you're in business, people in business get it. You're going to follow up. And a lot of times that's what you say. Great. I'm going to follow up with you in X, Y amount. So they get it that, what, you are in the game of winning too. And so are they, like we ain't here to play hobby or, games. We're in business. And so I 100% agree with you with these 3 C's. And, it's so important to see that confident person. Mm-hmm. No matter if you're walking in a space, we just talked about this. This is so great that we're talking about this again, especially more so, I think more people are less confident when they're walking actually in a room than and they can kind of hide behind the camera a little bit.
Right.
And, I always say, like I said earlier, everybody else is nervous just as much as I am. You're meeting new people. We're always feeling like, is somebody judging me? You got to get that out of your system. And then own your walk, own the shit when you walk in the space.
Yeah.
Because, a nice smile, all the things that is on camera too, right? A nice smile says, I'm friendly, I'm approachable. You know what? You're not, like I said, you're not looking like a freaking hot mess.
Yeah.
And so make sure when you're doing these things, ladies, that you are really making sure that you're showing up in that way. And yes, you can feel not so confident, but don't show it. Right?
Oh, 100%.
Right? Because we all start somewhere, but you know what? You're in business and you said yes to yourself and yes to moving forward. And so just these little things that we talked about are huge things that make a difference when you show up in the networking space. So I love this, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing your goodness today. And I also know that you have an amazing gift. Can you share that with us today?
Of course, yeah. So I actually came up with a really easy resource. I'm ADHD. We didn't talk about that at all. Like, I am someone who, like, out of sight, out of mind, overcommit. Like, that is me. So I created this really awesome resource. It's 10 items of just walking you through where exactly in your approach to networking you can make improvements to start generating more leads and more referrals. So it's a checklist, but it's a way to go through this checklist like a self audit, right? Go through this checklist and figure out exactly where you're feeling pretty good, and then, like, okay, I didn't at all even think about this aspect of my networking strategy, and then you can take those pieces in that checklist and figure out how you can start laser focusing and exactly how to start generating more leads and more referrals from what you have going on. So I created that as completely free, and it's only 10 items, so it takes only an hour to get through at most.
Awesome. I love
Yeah.
that. Easy peasy. And ladies, grab the special gift that she has because this is definitely something that's going to help you in your networking experience. So thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. We appreciate you. And ladies, I'll make sure to have all the links and things to hook up with Sarah, anything that she leaves behind. It will be in the show notes of the podcast. So thanks again, Sarah. We really appreciate you being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, ladies, until next time, own it, embrace it, and celebrate the shit out of it because you, my friend, are in charge of business.